This review is going to be a really hard one to make, and it's not because of my verdict on the game. This game is so hard to review for so many reasons. The first one is that it's 19 years late for a lot of people who've been waiting for it, but this time it's not backed up by a big shot studio. It's a crowd-funded, semi-indie game. Not only that, but 19 years worth of expectation will almost guarantee disappointment. On the other hand, Shenmue is a big part of my early gaming days and childhood, and I have very fond memories of it. And I'm sure that's the case for all of you that's watching this video. It's gonna be very hard to be unbiased when you have rose-tinted glasses looking into this game. Because of those unique, different circumstances, I think this game's review is different than all of the other game reviews out there. And it should be scored in a different way to the other games as well. It wouldn't be fair to compare this game to other titles backed up by big studios because it will lose every single time. In order to make this video and fully enjoy Shenmue 3, I have played the HD remakes of Shenmue 1 and Shenmue 2. I wanted to remember all the details to the story as well as to get the full picture in terms of the entire saga. After all, the last time that I actually played Shenmue was Shenmue 2 on a Japanese Dreamcast 11 years ago. The latest iteration before Shenmue 3 was actually Shenmue 2 on the very limited Dreamcast and the original Xbox. Shenmue 3, however, is a title not limited by its time and has all the RAM and GPU power to bring to life all of Yu Suzuki's ideas, who had to cut back a lot in terms of making the game back then. Because of the Dreamcast's limited capability, both Shenmue 1 and Shenmue 2 were divided to 3 CDs separately, each CD signifying a chapter in the game. In my opinion, they sadly didn't take advantage of the new hardware at all when they made Shenmue 3. Yes, the graphics have improved drastically, but it's very standard in today's time and it's not hard to improve on a 19-year-old game. The dialogues are the same as before and I'm fine with it because it's a stylistic choice, but why couldn't they spring the money for the lips to be more synced to the dialogue rather than just the mouth opening and closing like they did on Shenmue 1 and 2 when they didn't have the lip syncing technology we have today. The next thing that really bothered me was the scenes jump cutting a bit, which is not something you would have seen in the past games and was a weird stylistic choice that took some time for me to get used to. I'm talking about Ryo walking with Shenhua to the village while talking, then a black screen appears and then they continue talking after they teleported. Unlike the previous games where it was a scene-by-scene situation. And from what I have learned, it was due to a technical limitation that you can witness in the debugged mode of the game, where they would have to make that cut in order for the characters to be in the next playable area or something like that. The very last gripe that I had with the game was the very uninspired and low-skilled combat system. It was a random button mashing experience at best. Your opponents would block attacks without you having any way to combat it. There wasn't any timing involved or counter-attack system to it, just a block to reduce the damage received. The previous Shenmue's combat system wasn't the best by any stretch of the imagination, but it's still better than the Shenmue 3 combat system, which is a real shame in my opinion because one of the reasons Shenmue got real big was because of the new ideas it introduced into the gaming world. Being one of the first, if not the first open world games, that's why it's so weird to me that a game series that innovated so much in the industry would come up with such a bad and lackluster combat system like that. Now that I actually got all of the negative things about the game aside, I'd like to tell you that I really enjoyed the game actually, and I think it's pretty good, but because I measure it differently than other games. To the uninitiated new players, Shenmue would probably be a 6.5 or a 7 out of 10. But for someone who had followed the series, and if we rank it and measure it only as a sequel to the other games it produced, it's a pretty good execution that I could give an easy 8 or 8.5 out of 10. Yes, it does keep its old stylistic elements that were mostly there because of bad hardware rather than a choice, and they did not upgrade things that they should have, like the combat system or maybe the animations, but it's still a good Shenmue game and the story is very enjoyable. The open world elements are not as revolutionary as Shenmue 1, the leveling up system and the jobs are grindy with not a lot of fun in them, but that's the Shenmue charm. It's a story-driven game through real life which sometimes have downtime, and it's a slow burn. You can't always be fighting thugs and avenging your father's death. There's real life limitation like the other characters' schedule, money, and other things involved in the story. Like I said, it's definitely a slow burn and a narrative-driven game, which is why I'm treating Shenmue like a visual novel with interactive elements rather than a regular game. The story is gonna be the strongest side of this game until a large studio will back it up and give you Suzuki a blank check to implement all the best ideas he have to the game. I'm gonna drop some spoiler related info in this part of the video, so if you haven't played the game and plan to play it, please skip this part. For me, Shenmue 3 was very enjoyable for a different reason that a lot of others can't relate to. Shenmue 3 to the regular player seems a bit formulaic. You run into an unbeatable character, take a beating, step back, train a bit and win the fight, which happens twice in the game and to the untrained eye seems rather lazy. To me, however, it captures a martial artist's journey really well. Being a martial artist myself who trains daily and competes in amateur events, it was very easy to relate to the mundane training where you hone your techniques, get in shape, and sometimes even take a step back and add some new moves to your game so you can defeat an opponent who had previously bested you. And in my opinion, it's a very underappreciated aspect of the game that many will look over it and sadly miss it. I don't know if Yu Suzuki is a martial artist himself, but him being from Japan, where martial arts are a huge part of the culture, I think that's why he brought it into the game so well, and if you look back, it's definitely an aspect of the series that you can find in Shenmue 1 and Shenmue 2 now that you're looking at it. Because in Shenmue 1 you learn several techniques that go with you into Shenmue 2, where you also learn even more techniques that will help you win eventually fights against tougher opponents and even boss characters. You need to also not forget the fact that the original plan for Shenmue was to be a 16-chapter story where you eventually need to defeat Lan Di, a guy that you couldn't even eat successfully once in Shenmue 3. You'd have to make a lot of progress as a martial artist to get to the point where you can challenge him and actually pose a threat. So if you take all of those facts, this is definitely a slow story building over time, and it's about the journey. To quote the famous Bruce Lee, it's like a finger pointing to the moon. If you concentrate on the finger, you're going to miss all that heavenly glory. So yeah, I definitely think Shenmue 3 is a great game, but only for people looking for a story-driven game or for Shenmue fans solely. Until it gets some backing behind it from a studio, it can't and shouldn't compete against other games. I think that the game desperately needs a studio because of the fact that it was littered with the Kickstarter contributions in the game to the point where it kinda takes you out of the experience. One of the benefits that they sold in Kickstarter was to write something in the guest book of the hotel that you stay in the game. It kinda breaks the fourth wall in the game, which is not something unusual for it, but in a bad way, because when I read through the book, I found a comment about the guest not liking the hotel because it only accepts fiat currency and not crypto, which I don't think ever existed in the 80s where the game actually takes place. Like I said, the game breaks the fourth wall a lot, so it's not that bad, but that's definitely a weird choice for a game where the story is the strongest selling point, so why would you want something to unimmerse you from the story like that? Thank you guys for watching the video. This takes a lot of time to make, so any interaction with the video like a rating or a comment helps a lot. And if you want to keep seeing those videos, consider subscribing to the channel with the notification bell turned on and supporting the channel on Patreon.